Hall and Woodley. Wow, something's missing here, right? And I'm not being a hater. I'm a supporter of that match. You guys know that. But something is off here, only in that this thing was red hot. They were doing press conferences. They were doing clips. It was back and forth. It had stolen the headlines. It's all died off and the fight's 2 weeks away. I had to look it up. I didn't know when the fight was. If you're ever promoting a fight and a viewer who watches it and is a supporter does not know who, what, when, why, and where, you failed. Right? I mean, it's simple as that. I did not know the date of the fight. I actually had a discussion with my father-in-law yesterday on my way out to Submission Underground, and he told me the fight was this month. I thought it was in September. Now, it doesn't matter. We got to the bottom of it. I'm only illustrating that somewhere within the recipe of announcing a Paul fight, you've got to get the formula right. And Floyd Mayweather is extremely consistent 5 weeks. You won't even know Floyd is training. You won't even know Floyd's going to fight again. Floyd will be in perfect shape, have a signed contract, and announce it to the world 5 Saturdays before he makes the walk. That is the shortest of anybody that I could give you an example of. Most guys are 2 months. Many guys, it used to be 3 months. So it's just one of those situations where if there's anything to learn from this, I think I might have identified it. They came out a little too hot, a little bit too early. Maybe they will want to go in the future to more of that 5-week structure that Floyd does. But things are heating back up, right? And Logan's going to be great. Logan has a plan. Jake, rather, has a plan, whether we've seen it or not. I assure you that he has when he came out with a little piece of theater yesterday. And it was a whiteboard. Now, I love the whiteboard. The whiteboard works. Jake worked very hard to make it appear as though he didn't work at all in coming up with what he called a hit list. And he had guys' names misspelled, right? All the condescending, all the low-hanging fruit that you would imagine. Guys' names misspelled, and some guys' names were crossed out, and one name was just wrong. Okay. How true do you think this is? Right? I think if we were to talk, or if I was to share my own opinion 5 months ago, I wouldn't have thought it was true at all. But the buck stops when Logan got in there with Floyd. And the buck stops not when Jake beat Ben or when he beat Nate. It stops when he signed to fight Tyron. That's where you can no longer think that this is a gag. Now, you can have a conversation on who is going to win. You can break that down. But you lose the right to argue that it's just talk. Or that these guys don't mean it, or they're not sincere, or that they're trolling somebody. When you've had 3 fights and you signed to fight a former world champion, the gig is up. You're a tough guy. At least you believe that you are. And I got to say the same thing for older brother when he got up and beat Floyd. Under the rules that he and Floyd agreed to fight under, which is what an exhibition is, you got to sprinkle your own rules on there, Logan beat Floyd. I do feel as though when I was reading the hit list, it would be guys I don't want to be hit by list if he was in there with actual boxers. Now, I think that T. Wood can get down, and I don't think that Jake should be put anywhere above an amateur. He has an amateur record, amateur amount of rounds, amateur skills. But you could say the same about Tyron. Tyron was the champion of the world. I'll remind you, he won the belt that night with his hands. He knocked Robbie Lawler out to take the belt away. So we know that Tyron's got hands, and we also know that he's naturally athletic. In the world of boxing, and based on his record and his skills, he would also go into the amateurs. You would get at a smoker, you get a local YMCA, a POW club, work your way up to the Golden Gloves. Great. What would happen with Jake if he got in there with actual boxers? And it's very hard to dismiss anymore. It's very hard to dismiss after his brother beats Floyd. After his brother goes the distance with Floyd. However you want to word it. It's hard to dismiss. And it makes you begin to question things that you believed to be true. Nate Robinson and Ben Askren both lacked one thing. And it was only one thing, but it was head movement. They didn't move their head very much. So when Jake wanted to reach out and touch them, they were there. It turns out Jake's got a real natural power. Jake's also very good with distance. He's great with his flinches and setups, which is how he gets the ball in the goal to start with. Tyron moves differently. Tyron moves a lot. Tyron also knows full well that he's getting into a real fight. I don't know that Ben Askren had that advantage. If you'll remember, Jake was a very different perception back then. He was 24 years old. He had just beat a basketball guy, which we took nothing from. He had some other fight somewhere. It might have been a draw. I get he and his brother's record confused. Jake had either had 2 fights going into that, and he won them both, or he had a draw in there, or he had a lot. I don't even know. It's one of those things, right? Amateur. But Tyron does have that head movement, and Tyron is also fully aware that he is getting into a real fight. Tyron is not of the mind of, oh, this is just a YouTube guy, or this is a guy with limited experience. Tyron is fully trained. He will be fully prepared. His walk will be different. His presence in the ring will be different. His strategy will exist. I don't know that Nate or Ben had a strategy, right? I don't know enough about the Ben fight. There's wasn't a lot to see there. The Nate fight, there wasn't any offense to see from Robinson. So it's a tough one to judge. But Tyron is of the mind that he knows what he's getting into. Look, if you ever find yourself in a fight that's harder than you thought it was going to be, things unravel very quickly. Any form of combat. That could be a wrestling match, a judo, a submission, boxing, MMA, any way you want to do it. But when you're in combat and you find yourself in battle with somebody who is giving you more of a fight than you thought they were going to, they held up better than you expected, things can fall apart quickly. You guys will remember Conor versus Nate Diaz part 1. That wasn't just a size issue. That was a surprise to Conor when he landed that left hand that had put everybody down before that. And he landed it once, twice, 3, 4 times on Nate, and Nate's still standing there. Oh, geez. Conor just didn't know. I didn't know anybody could take that shot. I didn't know this guy had that kind of chin. I didn't know this extra weight was going to send different vibrations through his body. It's just one of those things, match that I know you'll be able to relate to because you all saw it, where things can change very quickly. I think Tyron Woodley, aside from his beautiful resume, aside from his speed, his natural power, his skills, his true love of boxing, even if he went into MMA, he loves boxing. I think aside from all of that, one of the things that's going to serve him best is he respects Jake Paul. He does not think that this is a joke. He thinks this is a long, hard night. And coming in with that approach can be very helpful, and the adverse could be true for Jake. One thing that happens when you get on a roll, when you start getting guys out of there quickly, is you start to expect to get them out of there quickly, which comes to the point that I'm trying to bring up. If Tyron knows this is going to be a long, hard fight, and Jake thinks it's going to be over in 40 seconds, that favors Tyron, not Jake. Can't assure for you that that's Jake's mindset. I can just tell you, historically speaking, use Ronda Rousey as an example for MMA. When Ronda was finishing all those cans in the first round with the armbar, that was great for marketing, but that wasn't great for Ronda because now she starts to expect it. She begins to train as though it's going to happen. She warms up as though it's going to happen. She walks in there and expects it as Brute Buffer is saying her name for it to happen. That's not wrong. That's what happens when you get on a roll. And so then when you find yourself in there with Holly Holm, who's doing better than you thought she was going to do, things unravel. I would just encourage you, as this fight is getting closer, and I would encourage you guys to enjoy this. I think Paul brings something to the table. I think T. Wood and everything he's represented in his relationship with Askren, I think he must win. We love those high-pressure situations as fans, right? And they both got it. I would encourage you just to keep an eye on Tyron's approach. It's different. It's calculated. It's measured. He knows full well what he's getting into.